Hi guys, today we are going to explore a movie named The Fault in Our Stars, which is released in 2014. The movie starts with a 17-year girl named Hazel Grace. She tells us that we all have different stories in this world. Some stories are sugar-coated with beautiful people and beautiful situations. She tells us that I like that versions very much too. But in my story, this is me, a girl who always carry a portable oxygen cylinder to breathe properly. Hazel is battling with her thyroid cancer. She doesn't have any friends, nor she is interested in making any. Her doctor keeps suggesting a support group, to which Hazel says that is not her thing. After some arguments with her parents, she agrees to visit that support group either way. The leader of that support group is Mr. Patrick. He likes to refer himself as an example that there is God and healing is possible. Patrick is a survivor of testicular cancer. In his story, he almost died, but somehow he survives. Because of that, he formed a support group to encourage others that if they are lucky, they might be healed as well. He strongly believes in Jesus. In every session, he uses a picture, the heart of Jesus, a carpet that he made so everyone can sit on. The therapy goes as Hazel expected. She doesn't like it and wasn't planning going back for another session. But she didn't know that what was about to happen in the next session. Hazel's life consisted of watching reality shows, doctor's appointments, and consuming prescription drugs 3 times every day. But the worst thing to her was that she had to go for the next session of that support group. When it's time for the next session, Hazel does everything she can to convince her parents to let her not to go. But that doesn't work. The reason behind Hazel's visit is because she wants to make her parents happy. That is the reason she does everything in the last couple of days. Hazel's mother drops her off at the building and she walks inside. While walking, she suddenly bumps into a cute boy that she sees him for the first time. Both of them attracted each other on their first sight. Later the session starts and the boy that bumped into her was also there, which made Hazel feel a bit shy. That boy was new in there, so he introduces himself. His name is Augustus. He is 18 years old and he had osteosarcoma, which resulted in losing one of his legs. But real reason behind why he is there is because of his friend Isaac. Isaac was also suffering from cancer, retinoblastoma. To be more exact, he had one eye removed and will have to remove the other one in order to stop the cancer. He reveals that even though he is battling this cancer happily because he has a girlfriend that he loves a lot and a friend like Augustus. To get to know Augustus better, Patrick asks him to share his fears. He reveals that his biggest fear is oblivion and he likes to live an extraordinary life and want to be remembered as a hero. Then Patrick asks everyone who would like to comment on Augustus' fear. Suddenly, Hazel raises her hand and she says that we are all going to die either way and we will be forgotten eventually. So there is no point in fearing oblivion. After the session gets over, Hazel steps outside the hall and waits for her mother to pick her up. Upon waiting, she saw Isaac and his girlfriend being affectionate. They have a way of expressing their love for each other by saying always in multiple times in a day. When Augustus comes next to her, he explains Hazel the meaning behind their always and both of them have a laugh. Suddenly, Augustus invites Hazel to watch a movie. During their chit-chat, Augustus takes a cigarette and puts in his mouth. Hazel looks at him, confused and disgusted. She is totally disappointed with him and tell him that he already have cancer and is opting for another one. Augustus looks at her and laughs. He tells her that the cigarettes never hurt you unless you light them and he has never lit one. For him, cigarettes are his metaphor. He puts a thing that has the ability to put him to sleep forever but never gives it the power to put him to eternal sleep. She gets impressed by the way this young boy thinks. Her mother comes to pick her up, but she decides to go and watch a movie with Augustus. As they are driving, he asks her about her story. Hazel explains that she was 13 when the cancer was discovered. It was stage 4 thyroid cancer. She went through all the treatment and it was working but stopped working. After a while, her lungs had started filling up with water and there was nothing that could have been done. In her words, but a miracle had happened. She got better by the treatment that didn't work for a lot of other people, but it sure did for her. Meantime, they arrive at Augustus' house and head to his room. His room was decorated with lots of his trophies and gaming station. As they sit down, he asks her what's her real story is and not the cancer one, hobbies and what she loves. Hazel tells him that her all-time favorite novel is An Imperial Affliction, written by Peter Van, the author, one who understands what it is like to be dying but hasn't died yet. Suddenly, Augustus proposes a deal. He promises her to read the novel only if Hazel reads his favorite book named Counterinsurgents, a book about his favorite video game. Couple of days goes on and Hazel waits for Augustus' call. But a couple of more days goes by and there is no sign of him until one day Hazel receives a text message from Augustus. In that text, Augustus expresses love for the book and his obsession with it. The book is about cancer and it finishes in a mid-sentence, which makes the reader crazy. But that's what a life with cancer is. Like you are expecting to die at any moment. Later on, Hazel receives a phone call from Augustus and he asks her to come over his house as his friend Isaac, who is having a psychotic episode. When Hazel arrives at his place and sees that Isaac not feeling good, Isaac reveals that his girlfriend had broken up with him because she couldn't handle the fact that Isaac would removing his other eye too. Both of them cheer up Isaac by letting him break those trophies from Augustus' room. While Isaac is letting his anger out, Augustus explains his admirations to Hazel's book and both of them have the same questions like what happens at the end of the book, what happens to that mother, the Dutch tulip man and even the hamster. He asks Hazel that did she ever try to contact that book's author. Hazel reveals that she has sent him a number of letters but he has never responded because the author had moved to Amsterdam later. In that night, Augustus calls Hazel and talks her that he can't stop thinking about the book. Both of them have a chat about it and he tells her that he had found the email of that author's assistant and had contacted about the book. Hazel gets thrilled and excited as she writes a message herself to the author. She asks him all the questions of her and Augustus. She sends the email to Augustus through the phone and he jokes about the mail is a bit pretentious. Hazel reminds him that it's late and she should go to sleep. Augustus says okay and Hazel says it back. As they go back, Augustus suggests that okay should be there always. Hazel happily accepted that idea. The next morning, Hazel wakes up with an amazing news. She had received an email from the author and he had invited them to Amsterdam to answer all of their questions. Hazel gets excited and calls out for her mom. Suddenly she comes up to the room and sees the email. Seeing Hazel happy makes her smile. But unfortunately, they can't afford the charges to reach Amsterdam. Hazel understands the situation and says nothing about it. After the session, Hazel tells Augustus about the situation and he suggests that she should ask the genie to make her wish come true. Then she reveals that she had already used that wish to go to Disneyland. Augustus makes fun of her wish and jokes about it. In the afternoon, Augustus comes to Hazel's house and invites her for a picnic. Suddenly, she agrees to it and they arrive at the Funky Ponds by Jeep Van Leshout, a picnic place where a skeleton is a playground. During their discussion, Augustus reveals that he is a virgin, but Hazel doesn't believe that. Then he draws a circle in the sand and named it the Circle of Virginity and draws himself in it as he explains that losing this as a guy without one leg are very slim. They both laugh about it and set up the picnic and enjoy it a lot. As they are sitting and having sandwiches, he tells Hazel that he had talked to the genies and asked them to fulfill his wish of meeting Peter Van Hat. But of course, he couldn't go to meet him without the girl who introduced him to the author. And the genies were all for it. After listening this, Hazel gets really excited and goes to tell her mother about it. They agrees, but she should go and talk to her doctor first. At the doctor's, they given them positive news. She can visit Amsterdam only if her mother goes with her. But all of a sudden, she comes crumbling down as Hazel is taken to the hospital because her lungs have been filled up with water once more. After some time, Hazel gets better and is having a chat with the doctors. The only question on her mind was if she could go to Amsterdam or not. The doctors say no, and Hazel is left devastated. She doesn't talk to Augustus because she doesn't want to waste his time, and she knows that she can't fulfill his wish. Some time passes and Hazel finally answers Augustus' call. She tells him that she isn't well and that she doesn't want this particular life. Next day, Augustus comes to Hazel's house, and as they were having a conversation, he tells her that he likes her, but she says that she can't let their situation go any further than friendship because she doesn't want to hurt him. Even though Augustus wants to be more than that, he agrees to her that being just friends. One morning, as Hazel is checking her mails, she notices a mail from the author's assistant. In the mail, it said that the author was expecting them on the 4th. Suddenly, Hazel calls out her mom and asks her that whether she had forgotten to cancel their trip to Amsterdam. Her mother looks at her with excitement and reveals that they are going to Amsterdam after all. As they are getting out of the house, ready to go to the airport, suddenly Augustus arrives with a limo, claiming that he always travels with style. When they get in the plane, Augustus says that he has never flown on a plane before and gets a little bit scared. She jokes about it and helps him to relax. When they arrive at the hotel, they get an invitation to a dinner in a restaurant called 𝐿, paid by the author. While Hazel starts getting ready and her mother gives a beautiful blue dress so that she can wear it to the dinner, Augustus knocks at their door and he is greeted by Hazel's mom and let him inside. When he sees Hazel and tells her that she is gorgeous. While they arrive at the restaurant, they are gifted with a champagne by the restaurant. Then they order the chef's choice and enjoys their night. After some casual conversation, Augustus tells Hazel that he loves her and he knows that we are all doomed and that one day all of our labor will turn into dust. But he wanted Hazel to know that he is in love with her. The next morning, both of them get ready to meet the author. They get to the author's house and they were greeted by the assistant who lets them inside. They greeted with the author who doesn't really exceed their expectations. The author is an alcoholic and he doesn't look well, nor he is nice. His behavior is absurd and it looks like he is making fun of them. The author makes fun of Augustus' intelligence and asks him if the cancer had gone to his brain or not. But Hazel tries to ease the tension and asks the author about the character Anna and her family. The author says that he is not interested in answering the questions about the book and tells her that nothing happens, they are all fiction. Suddenly Hazel and the author get into an argument and he tells them to leave. After they get out of the house, the assistant chases them. She apologizes and asks to take them to the Anne Frank's house. While they get to the house, Anne finds that there are no lifts and they badly needed a lift because of Hazel's breathing. She is brave and decides to go by the stairs. During the climb, she makes a couple of passes throughout the climb but never gives up. As she is climbing the stairs, Anne Frank's words echoing through the house are what motivates her to keep going. They climb to the top and everyone over there is proud of her. Anne's word of wisdom about capturing the beauty around are which motivate Hazel to kiss Augustus. After that, both of them spend the night by making love and holding each other. The next morning, when Augustus wakes up and instead of seeing Hazel by his side, he sees a note. On the note, there is a drawing of the circle of virginity and outside of the circle was Augustus. Then they have breakfast with Hazel's mom. As they are talking, Augustus remembers that he has to tell something to Hazel and he asks her mom if they could have some time alone. Then they go and take a walk. As they are sitting on a bench, Augustus finally reveals to her that the cancer has spread all over his body. Hazel gets devastated but Augustus tells her that not to treat him like he is dying. They agree that they are going to live the fullest, no matter how much they have got left. After they have come back from Amsterdam, Hazel and Isaac were hanging out at Augustus' place. Isaac had the surgery, and he reveals that his ex-girlfriend Monica didn't even call him to ask him whether he is alright or not. Augustus gets a crazy idea. They go and throw eggs over Monica's car. It gives Isaac some relief. Later one night, Hazel receives a phone call from Augustus asking her to come over to a gas station because he doesn't feel well. Soon Hazel arrives over there and sees that Augustus' stomach tube has been infected. So she calls an ambulance and they take him to the hospital. Even though Hazel wasn't allowed to see him, she stayed at the hospital and prays for him. After some time, Augustus gets released from the hospital. Now he is in a wheelchair. Hazel waits for him and takes him to their favorite place, which is the picnic spot. But Augustus' mental condition is down. He doesn't want to go from this world by unnoticed. Suddenly, Hazel gets angry as she explains that he is a hero to her and that's all that matters. Augustus had previously asked Hazel and Isaac to write an envelope for his funeral. So one day, he calls Hazel and asks her to come to a church. As she arrives, he tells her that he wants to hear their envelopes that he had prepared a pre-funeral. First goes Isaac, and his speech is both funny and beautiful. Hazel's speech is what makes Augustus' heart melt. Hazel refers to Augustus as the star that crossed love of her life, and their story is an epic one. She speaks to him and thanks him for their little infinity. Augustus dies 8 days later in the ICU. The cancer that stops his heart, which resulted in his death. The pain was unbearable to Hazel. She rates it a 10 as she reminds the situation when she went to the funeral and they would ask her to rate the pain out of 10. As Hazel waits to give her speech at the funeral, Peter Van himself stands next to Hazel. He tells her something, but she doesn't respond to him. She is next to give a speech. The speech delivers is not that one she read to Augustus at his pretend funeral. She kept those words for him only as she delivered an unplanned speech. After the funeral is done, she heads to her car to drive around for a little and clear her mind. When she gets into the car, and as she is about to drive off, the author climbs inside the car with her. He tells her that Augustus was persistent, asks him coming to the funeral and answering the questions they were once dying to ask. She tells him that she doesn't want to know anything and asks him to leave her car. He tries to talk to her, but she doesn't let him. The author gives her a letter, which she crushes between her hands and kicks the author out of the car. After that, when she is sitting at home, Isaac comes to visit her. Both of them have a chat about Augustus' memories. When Isaac asks Hazel about the author, she reacts in annoyance. Isaac asks her if she had read the letter or not and tells her that it was written by Augustus. Suddenly, Hazel rushes to the car to see the crumpled piece of paper. In that letter,
Mr. Van Houten, I'm a good person but a shitty writer. You're a shitty person but a good writer. I think we'd make a good team. I don't want to ask you for any favors, but if you have the time, and from what I saw you have plenty, please fix this for me. It's a eulogy for Hazel. She asked me to write one, and I'm trying. I could use a little flair. See, the thing is, we all want to be remembered. But Hazel's different. Hazel knows the truth. She didn't want a million admirers, she just wanted one. And she got it. Maybe she wasn't loved widely, but she was loved deeply. And isn't that more than most of us get? When Hazel was sick, I knew I was dying, but I didn't want to say so. She was in the ICU, and I snuck in for 10 minutes, and I sat with her before I got caught. Her eyes were closed, her skin pale, but her hands were still her hands. Still warm, and her nails were painted this dark blue-black color, and I just held them, and I willed myself to imagine a world without us, and what a worthless world that would be. She's so beautiful. You don't get tired of looking at her. You never worry if she's smarter than you, because you know she is. She's funny without ever being mean. I love her. God, I love her. I'm so lucky to love her, Van Houten. You don't get to choose if you get hurt in this world, but you do have a say in who hurts you. And I like my choices. I hope she likes hers. Okay, Hazel Grace?
Okay.